Okay. Okay, Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to all audiences. A very warm greeting from IPASA UTM. Today we will be having a webinar titled Importance of Sewerage Services in relation to the water cycle with our adjunct professor. Okay, I would like to welcome Professor Engineer T.S. Haji Mohamed Haniffa bin Haji Abdul Hamid. Okay, welcome Prof. Okay, before we start with the webinar, allow me to introduce a little bit on our speaker, right? Professor Engineer T.S. Haji Muhammad Haniffa holds a diploma in civil engineering from UTM. So basically, Prof is our alumni. Okay, degree of civil engineering from University of Glasgow, and master in public health and environmental control engineering from University of Strathclyde, Scotland. Okay, perhaps the pronunciation is correct, Prof? Professor Engineer served the City Hall of Kuala Lumpur from 1981 for 13 years as a municipal engineer, and later moved to IWK in early 1994. Okay, Professor is a professional engineer registered with the Board of Engineers Malaysia, and his last position was the Chief Operating Officer of IWK until October 2020, quite recent. His main areas of expertise are in infrastructure developments, water and wastewater management, and river management. He was the first Malaysian selected by the British High Commissioner to undergo an intensive management program at the Templeton College, Oxford University's Business School in 1997. Professor Engineer is a member of various professional institutions, includes the Chartered Institution of Water and Environmental Management UK, the International Water Association UK, and Vice President of the Malaysian Water Association. Okay, he was also appointed as one of the first director of the Malaysian Water Academy, an EIA consultant, and also a professional technologist. Professor is also a fellow of Institution of Engineers, fellow of Academy of Science Malaysia (ASM), a chartered water and environment manager, as well as UK and Asian Chartered Professional Engineer. Over the years, Professor has directly and indirectly contributed to the development of sewerage industry in Malaysia. Recently, he had been appointed as an accreditation board member at Chartered Institution of Water and Environmental Management, London, UK. Okay, with that extensive biography of our invited speaker, without further ado, I would like to pass this session to Professor Engineer T.S. Haji Mohamed Haniffa for this presentation. And for all audiences, if you have any question on the presentation, feel free to write a comment and we will address the questions during the Q&A session. So, Prof, the platform is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Shamimi, for the lengthy introduction. Suffice to say, I'm a professional engineer, a background, civil engineer. So my name is Haniffa. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and may peace be upon every one of you. So for today's lecture, I'm actually going to speak about the importance of sewerage within the water cycle. So to understand the importance, first of all, I think we have to really understand the importance of water. And coincidentally, this morning I had been giving a lecture to MJIT, Malaysian International Institute of Technology, Japan, at UTM, talking about water. And a lot of the slides which I shared this morning is quite different from the slides this afternoon, but that was very, very much focused on research. So for now, I'm going to talk about the importance of managing sewerage in a good manner so that you can preserve the water resources. So for this, first of all, I'd like to thank IPASA, the Center of Environmental Sustainability and Water Security of UTM, for me to share my experiences through this webinar. I'll urge you to just sit back and listen. Even if you don't understand me, please focus on the slides, the pictures, because the pictures tells a lot of stories. And even if you didn't understand me, I think you will understand what I'm trying to say through the pictures. So for a start, the talk will cover basic understanding of water, wastewater, and sewerage. These are the fundamentals. If you got the fundamentals wrong, then we will be very narrow in our planning and also our scope of focus. So from the fundamentals, then I would go on to explain a bit on what consists of sewerage services and what are the technologies involved. This one I will just breeze through to just give you, maybe through the pictures, to a closer understanding. And then further on, I'll go into what will be the future, what are the trends, and also the importance of capacity development in this sector. So just sit back and just stare at some of the slides here. So the next slide is, okay, if you look at this slide, God Almighty created this entire planet. So if you look at the picture on the left hand side, everything is done in accordance to some divine rulings, and it's all actually under arranged in precise condition. So I think this is the first fundamental which we really need to understand. Because we cannot change some things in the equation. So if you refer to the Quran, chapter 5, Surah Ar-Rahman, verse number 8, it talks about the balance. So if you look at the picture there, the whole solar system is actually, has been there for ages, and nothing has really much changed. God Almighty says in the Quran, the sun and the moon move by precise calculation, and the stars and the trees prostrate. And the heaven He raised and imposed the balance, that you not transgress within the balance. So God already warned us from the start for us not to actually cross the line. So when we talk about water, we go into the next slide. Now, if you stare at this blue marble, what do you really see? Basically, what you see is this is the planet which we are in. The planet Earth appears blue in color. It consists of 7 continents and 5 large oceans. Inhabitant for more than 7 billion human beings and many different forms of life. Now, this Earth has a circumference of about 40,000 kilometers, and it moves in a orbital speed of about 30 kilometers per second. Now, this is important for you to understand. Now, at 30 kilometers per second, it only takes about 7 minutes to circulate its circumferences, but it takes about 4 hours to reach the moon, which is about 400,000 kilometers away. Now, on planet Earth, if you want to go from, say, Kuala Lumpur to Johor, it takes about 4 hours. But that is the speed God has created Earth to move. And within this blue marble, what you can see, the blue is basically water. So anyone who talks to you and say there's scarcity of water, there's no water, the water which we know is always about no water or polluted water, because we always have a narrow outlook on the water. But God Almighty have already said, we have already lodged plenty of water on planet Earth, and it's for you to manage it. And we as the Clarifiers of the planet, and also as scientists and administrators, we need to really manage this water in the best endeavors. So if you don't manage water, this is where words like scarcity water, water stress, polluted water, no water, and all this comes in. So this is the first point which I like to make, and which will lead to the importance of sewerage. So first point is, there's plenty of water on planet Earth. God have created planet Earth with great balance. The water will never disappear, by the praise of God. And it is for us to manage this volume of water. So the volume of water on planet Earth from the olden days, from the dinosaurs days, and the water today, the volume is still the same. What have changed is only the quality of water and perhaps the location of water due to human interventions, due to climate change, and so on and so on. Next slide, please. So why God created this water is, as we all know, water is life. So 70% of our planet is consists of water, and also 70% of our body is made up of water. For example, if you're 70 kilograms, your weight, 49 kilograms is water. If you squeeze the water out, then the balance is what is your body, you know. So if you look at the skin consists of 80% water, you know. The liver is 75% water. Blood, of course, you know, 90% is water, you know? So to have a good life and a good health, you need good quality of water. So if you consume not good water or polluted water or the wrong type of water, then that is where the the first defense of your health system will actually start ruining. Hence, the importance of water and sanitation. And engineers around the world provide good water supply systems and sanitary systems. Hence, make the human life and also the life of all beings, to be sustainable. So if you don't manage this water well, it will have an impact on everybody. Next slide. So this is the water cycle which we all learn in school, perhaps in geography or in science lessons. All we know is water comes from the sky, drops to the earth, percolates through the earth, evaporates, goes back, and the cycle goes on and go on. So this is the basic water cycle. But you have to do a lot of more research to really understand that if you don't know the details of the many other equations within this water cycle, that is where equations like water stress, pollution, and all that actually sets in. So you can see from this diagram, which has been proven by scientists, that the total quantity of water on planet Earth remains unchanged from the very start, and only the quality and the location has been varied from time to time due to all the interventions, including climate change and so on. So the next slide, please. So from the blue marble which I showed, if I transfer that information now into a very simple bar diagram, this is what you will see. Of the total quantity of water on planet Earth, if you look at the bar on the left-hand side, 97% of this water is actually remains in the sea, which is non-potable. Non-potable means not suitable for direct human consumption, meaning that the water is saline water, which means there's a lot of salt in the water, and hence you need to actually find technology to recover or capture this water for potable usage. So 97% of the water is in the seas, so you're left with only about 3% of the total volume of water, which is fresh water on this planet Earth. And from this 3%, scientists has further discovered close to 69% of this water still sits in the ice caps and the glaciers. Sometimes you hear the ice caps melting, and hence the sea water level actually rises. So this is where the water balance actually comes in, and the location actually starts changing. So 69% of the balance of the 3% fresh water is actually in the ice caps and the glaciers. So another 30% is underground. That means it's below the ground surface, and it's still not fully exploited. So there's huge volume of water still on planet Earth, and only a balance of less than 1%, which is about close to about 0.9% of the water which remains as surface water on the surface of planet Earth. And from this less than 1% of water, 87% of the water is in the lakes. So we need to actually find more water in the lakes than the rivers. A lot of the water is still sitting in the swamps, and only about 2% of the fresh water is actually sitting in the river. So very often we talk about polluted river, you know, we have not still exploited the full potentials of water worldwide. And in this polluted water is where sewerage also become a cycle within that discharge system, where the untreated sewage ends up into the surface waters, and hence there's pollution, there's infection, and many other environmental impacts. So I think these are the fundamentals which we need to know. In my earlier lecture, I've actually stressed that these are the areas of research and new teachings which needs to be explored further. And Malaysia, to be in comparative with many other parts of the world, we are quite at an advantage because the government have actually invested quite a lot on water and sanitation, and we could be a role model for many other parts of the world which requires technology development, capacity development, management, equipments, and so on and so on. Next. So in the Quran, Surah Al-Mu'minin, chapter 23, verse number 18, God Almighty said, "And we sent down from the sky water in due measure, and we gave it lodging in earth, and verily we are able to take it away." So if you look at the water cycle there's actually plenty of water around. So of course we always talk about no water, especially in Klang Valley here, very too often we get polluted water and also water cuts and so on. So we have to look beyond to actually look at other sources of water. Singapore, for example, is surrounded by water. The island is surrounded by water, yet the real surface water they have is only a very small percentage. Hence, they have actually started research on this water, and also implementation of new taps within Singapore, and that's why they are actually quite water rich today, although they don't have much resources. So likewise, many other parts of the world needs to also further exploit the potentials of water around them. Next. So the fact remains that we are still very dependent on the 1% source water on this planet Earth. So the 99%, bulk of which are staking in the seas and ocean, we have not exploited to the optimum. We have actually exploited, for example, we have desalination facilities and so on, but then when technology is not commercially viable, it's expensive, then there's still much more to be exploited. So this is where I think the focus for the next 2 decades, which we need to spend our knowledge and expertise to explore further. I give you an example of the telecommunication industry. Not too long ago, I remember in year 2005, if I'm not mistaken, when people told me that we can actually see faces on the phone, to me something was unimaginable. But today, 15 years on, I think almost everyone on the streets has a phone which can see faces and voices. And even now we are talking from many parts of the country, watching this webinar, through this cellular technology. So likewise, I believe in time to come, if we really spend much more effort on exploiting water technologies, there's many more to be found and to be made use for mankind. So the first thing is to get the salt out of water. Next slide. Okay, here I'm going to share a slide video which is about 4 minutes. which already shows some breakthroughs.
This is Kiunga. Kiunga is a small village, only a few miles from the border of Somalia,
I think the sound
on the
is
eastern coast of Kenya.
not there.
Each day is an
Shamimi?
exercise in survival. In the dry season, many are forced to cook, drink, and bathe with contaminated, brackish water.
You see children inside of these villages, and they've got these scars on their stomachs or their knees because of so much salt within these wounds. And it just breaks your heart. They basically poison their family with this water every single day.
Is that fresh water?
These salt water from the wells are not treated.
Kusababisha kuharisha, kutapika, utabidi mpaka upate madawa.
We were seeing children dying of kidney failure, disastrous impact on people here.
How do we do something different, and how do we provide a clean water source for them?
Through clean energy innovation, Give Power provides food, water, and electricity to people who need it most.
It started with putting solar on 2,500 schools in 17 countries. Then we realized very quickly that we could light up the whole village. The next evolution is, what are the most important end uses for human beings that need electricity? And we believe the number one is water. So recently we just did an installation of our first microgrid water desalination system.
The solar itself is not the end, it's the means to an end.
We took a 20-foot container and we integrated a 75,000 liter per day system that was designed specifically to work with a solar panel array.
When we turned on the tap, for obvious reason, everyone was pretty excited. I think having gone through so many years of water being such a scarce commodity, I'm not sure they entirely believe it.
Working with Give Power was the best time of my life. Desalination in Kenya, it's a beautiful initiative.
The Give Power solar water farm produces enough clean drinking water for 35,000 people every single day.
It's clean water, fresh water, good water.
Give Power now has the opportunity to scale this solution to help people in dry coastal regions around the world that desperately need clean water. So we're already underway in Colombia with our next system, and now we're zeroing in on Haiti.
How do you bring people out of poverty, but do it in a way that does not destroy the environment? We are focused on how we can help scale the solutions that are out there that can help address water shortages. And as Give Power expands its reach, that is helping improve financial lives all over the world, which is at the core of what Bank of America's purpose is all about.
Kwa hivyo asanteni sana, mradi ni uko sawa na tutafurahia watu wa Kiunga.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Shamimi. So basically what the video shows is, there's already new breakthroughs. So you can see this is Kiunga, a small remote area in Kenya, which is really shortage of water. And finally, they managed to use solar power to pump this water through filtration system, and basically to recover brackish water. So, if this is later on scaled up and made it viable for human consumption, I think these are the breakthroughs, and this will actually, bring out poverty and uplift the well-being of many people and, the industry and so on. So water is a huge commodity. So this particular slide, actually, I coined this word alpha and omega. Alpha is what we always say, what we seek. So what we always seek for clean water. Clean water which is pure, desirable, precious, and is also integral of a life. So a lot of focus is focused on the clean water, but there's no such thing called wastewater, if you don't use water to produce that wastewater. So the term wastewater actually derives from the word water. So this is where I use the word omega, which is what we throw. So what we throw is actually the used water, and when we throw this water, it comes in the form of wastewater, stormwater, sewage, and this, if not managed properly, brings along pollution, diseases, and also harass the environment. And this is really where the water revolution is really required. So for the revolution, what is really required is the knowledge drive, is the technology drive, and also there must be incentives to make this water revolution a reality. Next slide. And water is very much associated to health, and there's an international term called WASH, WASH, it's a acronym for water, sanitation, and health. Basically, what it says from this chart here is, the better the quality of water, the better the livelihood and the affluence of the society. Likewise, the better sanitation coverage, the better the society is, and so on. So these three things cannot be divided and look at in isolation. And this is where the water cycle actually comes in. So water, sanitation, and health is very, very closely knitted and related. So in the syllabus, in teaching, and in anywhere, we always have to sell this WASH concept. Otherwise, when you try to sell water alone or try to sell sewerage alone, there's no real value to it. And that is where a lot of time it gets left behind. So this is how we should progress moving forward. Next. And you know that we talk about waterborne diseases. Most of the diseases on planet Earth is related to water. And when you talk about waterborne diseases, WHO defines it when at least 2 or more people get contact by consuming the same food or water, then it's called a waterborne disease. And the type of disease includes diarrhea, hepatitis, malaria, typhoid, and so on and so on. So you can see that many of the diseases in Malaysia, has disappeared, basically because of the poor, of the good investment in water and sanitation. But there's still a lot of room for improvement. But at a global level, there's still a lot to be done. And this is where the good management of sewerage services at a global level will bring about the balance of the water cycle to a better optimum effect. Next slide, please. Now today we have to actually start worrying about emerging pollutants. Now, what are the emerging pollutants? You can see from some of these newspaper articles, you can see all sort of waste, including industrial waste, heavy metals, and so on. But one of the worrying one is, as people become more affluent, they consume more medicine, more vitamins, more drugs, and most of the time, only a small percentage of these drugs gets absorbed into the body, and bulk of it gets washed through the human being system, and it gets excreted, and it goes back to the water bodies. And this is where we have to look at emerging technologies, and bulk of it gets washed out through the sewerage system. So if you don't have the right technology in managing sewerage system, after treatment, it goes back to the environment. and this is where future threats of waterborne diseases will actually arise. The other day I was watching a movie, which is quite a recent movie. Maybe you can Google, look at a movie called Sea Fever. I think the movie was launched last year. This is about a group of fishermen. They venture into the sea using a big fishing vessel right in the middle of the ocean. Suddenly they have problem and they run out of water supply. And unfortunately, the water which they have and the water surrounding them, the sea, the water is polluted by some parasites. And these parasites can't be seen by the human naked eye. So the water which they take, for example, the water they take, it looks good, but it's polluted by parasite. So the moment they touch it or they consume it, they start bleeding and they get infected and they die. And actually, it's a good story for you to, if you are in the water industry, to watch. And these are some of the future emerging challenges which many countries are going to have, including our own country, Malaysia. And the next slide, please. A study done in California by, in Texas by Baylor University. They took many samples of fishes in the California River, Chicago River. This is a snapshot which I extracted from the magazine of National Geographic, I think about 10 years ago. This is a real research study, and when they analyzed the fish in many parts of the Chicago River, this is a diagram they came up with. People consume a lot of various drugs, these diabetics drugs, hypertension drugs, many type of drugs, and many of it gets excreted and adds up finally into the Chicago River. And when we analyze the fish, and this is a show proof that the pollution have now entered into the human food chain through fishes like this and so on. So this is not good at all, and we need technologies to actually overcome this. So in terms of technology, it's never ending. The technology which is used in the past is no longer applicable today. It may be relevant, but you still need to do a lot of research to actually look at new emerging technologies and new things moving forward. Next slide, please. So if you look from the global standpoint, this is a snapshot of the world today by UNICEF and WHO. Of the 7 billion human beings on planet Earth, over 2 billion people still globally do not have clean, safe water at their homes. You can see from the video just now, in Kenya and many other parts of the world, people still walk for miles to get a pail of water. So this is where I think we need to, like I showed in my first slide, there's still plenty of water. God have given us a lot of water, but we have not really administrated it properly. We have not actually exploited more technologies, and also to actually make it implementable and sustainable for human consumption. So there's a plenty of areas to improve in the water sector. Likewise, when you talk about sanitation, look at the diagram on the top right hand side. More than 2/3 of world's population still globally do not have safe excreta management. Close to almost 1 billion people still have, close to 1 billion people still excrete in the open. And if you look at a country like India, for example, they got more than 1.2 billion people around India. I was told about 400 million people still do not have proper toilet system. You know what is 400 million? 400 million people is more than 12 times the population of Malaysia. Now you imagine in Kuala Lumpur or in Johor Bahru, if you don't have a proper toilet system, what will happen? That is a very small population. So sanitation is very, very important. And if you look at the global map down there on sanitation, the dark green shows more than 90% coverage of sanitation. And Malaysia is at par with many developed countries, at par with USA, Canada, Japan, Australia, and many European countries in terms of sanitation coverage, thanks to our government who have actually done a lot since independence. Not too long ago, 60 years ago, a lot of improvement has been brought through the country. What is required of Malaysia now is to actually master this water sector. I'll show you a diagram later on how we have mastered other technologies, telecommunication, transportation, power. But on the water industry, we are still lagging behind. So if we actually put more effort, Malaysia can be a global water player in the years to come. Next slide, please. And another snapshot. This is from Global Water Intelligence. It shows that by year 2023, which is 2 years from now, the total value of the water industry is projected to be about close to $1 trillion US. That is huge. Where is this industry? It covers, sustainable technologies, economical, affordable approaches, integrated management, water management, climate change adaptations, of course, industry revolution 4.0. We look at new digital move towards the future using automation and so on. And if you look at the snapshot, the wordings at the left hand side of the slide, more than 80% of the wastewater produced in this world through human activities is still being discharged into rivers and seas without any pollution removal. This is a statement from United Nations and it still remains true. That means basically it reflects that there's still a lot of potential on investment on wastewater technologies. And it's also being projected by OECD Environmental Outlook for 2030 that by the year 2050, there will be water scarcity affecting many parts of the world, covering close to 5 billion people if nothing is being done today. So if business is as usual as today and there's no further improvements, then we are at risk. Almost 2/3 of the world's population will actually have to face water scarcity, water pollution, and so on, like what we are also facing here in Klang Valley today. Malaysia is not short of water. Anyone in Malaysia says we are water scarcity, they need to go back to UTM to do their water training programs, and UTM must actually educate more. There's no such thing as water scarcity in Malaysia. And whenever it rains, it gets flooded everywhere. It is the management of water which is important, and this is where I think we have to put our thoughts together and be together, managing water, moving towards the future. So we should not talk about water pollution, water scarcity, and so on. These are things which the technologies are there. It is actually how to manage it and how to do it. So it's a question of management rather than financing and technologies. Next slide, please. And every year, because water is so precious and so important to living beings, the world have come up with what is called a World Water Day. And 23rd of March every year, in many parts of the world, particularly in areas where water is lacking, like you can see in this picture here in Kenya and many parts of the world, they really take World Water Day very seriously. But in places like us, although we have World Water Day, but we don't really put a lot of serious engagement into this World Water Day. I think moving forward, we have to actually make World Water Day as a national celebration day and take a lot of sharing and caring of this World Water Day. Likewise for sanitation. Next slide, please. the 19th of November every year, worldwide, they call it World Toilet Day or World Sanitation Day. This is where they remind people of the importance of good toilet system, good sanitation system, good sewerage system, good wastewater management, and so on and so on. So for Malaysia, perhaps maybe UTM themselves, have to make these 2 days an event day for their university and have a lot of water programs both on the 22nd of March and 19th of November every year. So for the next 10 years in the calendar, you must have many programs. Maybe World Water Week, that whole week, World Toilet Day or World Sanitation Week. Then you can have a lot of programs and to also advocate and share a lot of research and knowledge and technologies, and also work together closely with the industries. The next slide, please. Okay, now I'm going to come to the subject matter, which is sewerage. I've purposely put up this slide. When you talk about utility, the four main utility which comes to our mind is like what I've depicted in this diagram here. If you look at the orange circles, that is the power utility. Now you can imagine yourself. You imagine power utility, oil and gas, solar, wind, electric cable, powers, coal, nuclear facilities, and so on. Where are they? They are very far ahead. You look at Tenaga Nasional in Malaysia. I think Malaysians cannot tolerate even a 20 minutes power cut. And to praise, Tenaga Nasional, I think this utility company have done very well. They have actually supplied power 24/7 throughout most parts of the country. There are still few parts in Sarawak and perhaps Sabah which needs further improvement, but generally I think Malaysia is very lucky and our power industry has gone very far. Now if you look at the black circles, this is the transportation industry. We talk about roads, highways, bridges, rails, ports, airports, transit. I think Malaysia is also very far ahead. They have actually invested a lot, and we have good, transportation infrastructure. Today, there's MRT construction. Maybe in 5 years' time, we'll have good MRT systems, rapid systems, like what we have in many western part of the world. If you look at the green circles, this is the telecommunication industry. We talk about cellular technology, networks, telecommunication, computing. We are also very far ahead. The fact that today we can have a webinar, people sitting from all parts of Malaysia and listening to the lecture, this is the technology which we have. At the same time, we have many parts of the world without water, with polluted rivers, with water scarcity, So the blue circles reflects the water utility. While the water utility is big and one of the first utility to be started off in the country, I think in terms of progress and development, we are still very far behind the other three utilities. And this is where I think water should be looked holistically. They have to look from the river basin point of view, have to look at the water cycle point of view, including wastewater and sewage must be an important part of this. Now, if you start looking at it in isolation, this is where we have the nuisance floods, the nuisance pollution, and lack of water, and so on and so on. So I think it's time for us now, although water and land is a state matter, I think there are enough laws to manage it in a more holistic manner, and I think we should not actually divide ourselves and rule. This is where I think a holistic approach, and I think the thought process as well, Malaysia being not too far behind from developed countries, I think Malaysian universities and Institute of Higher Education, including the industries, must invest more on water technologies, water management, water development, and bring our water sector at par with the other utility sectors. And to elaborate this, I will demonstrate a few from the the remaining of my slides. Next slide, please. So another fundamental which we need to understand is the definition. What is sewage and what is wastewater? If you look at the diagram on the left-hand side, sewage is basically all the discharges from domestic activities or municipal activities. Like for example, if you take a house, in the house, you're bathing, you're washing, you're gardening, your kitchen, all this waste ends up either as black water or grey water, and the combination of all this is called sewage. Whereas wastewater consists of much bigger than sewage. Wastewater is a total used water. You remember the omega which I mentioned just now? It's a combination of black water, sewage, grey water, industrial water, agriculture water, commercial water, storm water, and so on. So that is a bigger challenge to manage. Again, both of these ideally should be managed holistically. In Malaysia, I think we are lucky the sewerage is managed holistically. Wastewater is still very fragmented. Sewer lines can be used to actually receive compatible wastewater. This is where another area of investment which needs to be looked at if you want to focus on the water cycle and actually explore further on good management practices. And what is then sanitation? People often talk about sanitation. Sanitation is just policies and practices which put together, which is called sanitation practices. So I think the key word here is wastewater. And if you come up with a technology, if you look at the house there, if actually the volume of waste in that house is only minute, maybe this volume. But we use a lot of water to transport this waste and hence end up in a large volume of water. And this is where the entire problem starts. Now, if you understand what I'm trying to say, I think we have to revisit our toilet facilities from the basic, using huge amount of water to transport small volume of waste, also in the kitchen, these are the challenges moving into the future. Now, if you can stop these practices, like I mentioned to you 15 years ago, the handphone, practices, you come up with a breakthrough technology, I think there will be a lot of different perspective of sewerage management moving into the future. The technologies which you use today might not be relevant anymore. Just like the former CDs, records which you used to use, today those technologies are no longer applicable. So I believe in the wastewater sector as well, they will come with technologies which will actually do away with many of the technologies of today. So it's important for universities and UTM being a research university, I think you have to make water research much bigger. Of course, I'm one of the adjunct professors there, but I would see that the water sector there should be much bigger to challenge all the other bigger industries, so that people will come to Malaysia, maybe come to UTM, to actually master and become a water expert, like how we now used to go to Netherlands, Delft, and so on, to study water. Next. So these are some definitions of sewerage system. Basically, like I mentioned, anything comes out from the habitable building is called sewage, and the system which is connected leading towards a treatment plant is called a sewerage system. Next. And basically, there's three common types of sewerage services. The first type is what we call a connected system. Connected system is basically the properties, the premises actually connected to a series of pipes, and the sewage is channeled through these pipes to a sewage treatment plant. This is what we call as a type 1 or connected system. Next system is what we call on-site system, or in Malaysia very often we call it septic tank system. This basically all the wastewater from the household or the premises actually ends up into a magic box, normally at the back of the house. Of course, some they are in the front of the house. It goes into a black box, stays there for about 1 or 2 days, and it actually overflows into the nearest watercourse or through a filtration system. This is technology appropriate for today, but maybe in the future we have to revisit this technology. And what happens here is within the 24 hours or the 48 hours retention, sludge will settle down, the settled water effluent will actually overflow. But over time, if you don't dislodge, like in Malaysia, there's over 1 million septic tank. I can bet you today less than 5% of the septic tank are being dislodged, meaning that 95% of the septic tanks are not being dislodged, and hence we talk about river pollution in isolation. So the day-to-day overflow of this sludge, which is not being dislodged into the nearby watercourse or the nearby drain, entering to the main drain and the rivers, is another cause of organic pollution in many of our rivers today. So in totality, there's a big portion of all these sewage and septic tank discharges which are actually polluting many of the rivers. While the many treatment plants in the country, while it's seen to be meeting the effluent compliance standard, but pollution remains there. And these are some of the real key issues which again needs to be tackled from the water cycle point of view. Next one is what I call primitive system. Primitive system are system during the old days, during the ancient days, or during the colonized days. We have things like bucket latrines, pit latrines, overhang latrines, pour flush. You think these systems are not here in Malaysia? You'll be surprised if I say there's 1 over million systems like this in Malaysia. And if you don't believe me, after my lecture here, you just take, okay, now it's PKP, you can't go out. But after PKP, you take your motorbike or you take your car, you drive along any of the river systems in Kuala Lumpur. If you take Sungai Kelang upstream, Kampung Perembang, Kampung Puah, all these rivers, upstream, you will see hundreds of these type of systems along the squatter colonies, which actually directly goes into the environment. Now, there must be a plan to actually eradicate all this, and there must be a time frame in the plan. And somebody should monitor this, and somebody must take serious effort to, these are technologies which are good in the past. So before Independence Day, we were okay, but today is, it's not okay to have this sort of system. I myself, when I started work in City Hall of Kuala Lumpur, being in City Hall, being a municipal engineer, I'm in charge of the road drainage infrastructure, Jalan Tunku Rahman, or Jalan Tar, they call it. When I started work in 1981, Jalan Tunku Rahman was, where Coliseum and all that is full of bucket latrines. And part of my early days work was to, eradicate these bucket latrines. That means remove the bucket latrine and connect it to a sewerage system. And today, not even a single property in Jalan Tunku Rahman is, with this system. They're all connected properly. So this is where good management practices. I think City Hall KL is the leading municipality in Malaysia, which actually part the way of having good sanitary system by actually engaging the World Bank. They took World Bank loan to actually have good sanitation facilities from as early as the 70s. And these are the good management practices. So likewise, every other parts of the country needs to actually focus and take serious about all these facilities. Next slide, please. So now I move on to the connector system, talking about the collection system. Basically, there's about 5 or 6 components of the collection system. Number one is, of course, the sewer pipe. If you follow the diagram from the left hand, sewer pipe comes in various materials, forms, and so on. You can have another separate lecture just on the pipes. And then from the pipes, they have what is called manholes. If you look at the diagram, there's a manhole cover with Indoor Water logo there. But the manhole cover can come with many, many different logos. You got JPP logo, you have SPAN logo, you got municipality logos, you have Kumbahan, you got Sewer, you got, Pemuntungan, and so on. Basically, what is the manhole is, if you have a long length of pipe and if you don't have a manhole, how do you actually manage the pipes? Because from the sewerage system, from the toilets, as you know, the civic consciousness of many of people, even today in Malaysia, is not at the optimum level yet, if I can say. People still throw all sort of things into the toilet bowls, including brushes, cloths, toys. Now, if you don't have a manhole, then the sewer system will get blocked, and the sewer system won't be functioning. Hence, in a design, as a rule of thumb, I think it's about 300 feet away, about 100 meters away, we have manholes. And of course, at bends and so on, we introduce the manhole so that when you call manhole, it's a man entrance. Men can enter the hole to do the maintenance purposes. And when they enter the hole, they go with advanced equipment. I think Malaysia, through Water and many of their contractors, they have actually mastered this technology, and they've actually introduced a lot of new technologies, including rodding mechanisms, CCTV, and so on, to actually do the sewer maintenance. Now, from these sewer lines, if it's very long, you got pumping stations. So if through a gravity system, as you go deeper, you cannot build the treatment plant underground. So you need to lift the sewage. So you need a pumping station. So when you lift and then you pump again, then you have another pipeline. Normally, this pipeline is called pumping mains, or most of the time, technically, you use force main. Force because we use force to push the sewage. And the normal sewer, we call it trunk sewer. It can be in circular form, it can be in this form, it can be made of bricks, it can be made of clay, it can be made of concrete, and so on and so on. And also at times we have things called inverted siphon. Inverted siphon is when you go through a crossing, for example, a river, a ravine, and so on. So because of the gradient, if you put the pipe across the drain or the river, then you become a rubbish trap, and it cannot, the drain cannot function. So you have to go below it, and this is where you use the vacuum pressure to design these inverted siphons through these vacuum pressures. And there's an art to design these facilities. So these are all components of conveyor system. You can have many lectures on just the conveyor system, but for here, I'm not going to talk too much on the details of the collection system. Next slide. These are some pictures courtesy of Water. These are many of their staffs. For information, many of them are experts. They are engineers, they are scientists, they are also technicians. They monitor the blockages, the breakages. They use CCTV. They use a lot of advanced equipment. Maybe 20 years ago, we didn't have many of these, but these are progress. And through this maintenance work, you don't see a lot of fountains in our road. You don't see a lot of overflowing manholes in our road. Of course, you cannot have nuisance free, but I think what is important is their response time. And in the water, I think they are quite good in their response time. They respond quite fast into many of these complaints, and they have also adopted IR 4.0. Many of their systems are actually automated. The moment a complaint comes, it goes into their handphone of their operators, their managers. So if the operator don't do work, their managers know. If the managers don't do work, their big bosses will know, and of course, then the works get done very fast. So this is progress, and many parts of the world don't have all this. So Malaysia can really export this sort of expertise, and this is where the capacity development actually sets in. Next slide, please. Now I go into the wastewater treatment proper. Very simplistically, there are two streams in the wastewater treatment process. One is the liquid stream, which is the top. If you follow the number 1 to 9, those are the liquid stream. That means from the collection system, it goes through a pump station, it goes through a headworks or preliminary works, we call it, where you have all the screenings and the grid removals and so on. Then you go into normally a primary sedimentation clarifier, and then you go into a bioreactor. This is the heart of the plant, number 5. And then you go into the secondary clarifier, and to further polish the water, you go into the dish filters and the disinfection before the water is passed back to the environment. And in this liquid stream, there's a lot of technology involved. There's a lot of improvements. And this morning when I was giving a lecture to the MGIT forum on technology development, I have shared a lot of ideas on, we have to move away from Victorian technologies. Victorian technologies, I mean technologies of the past. Victoria, by its name, actually, originated from Britain, Great Britain. These are technologies which uses a lot of resources. For example, big land area. Now we have to look at smaller footprints. Now, to go to smaller footprint, you need new technologies. The emerging technologies are the biotechnology, the nanotechnologies. These are the technologies of the future which needs to be explored. What we have today is the technology of the current, but because land is becoming expensive and scarce, some of the valuable lands where the treatment plants are actually sitting tomorrow might disappear, and they might use new technologies to actually redevelop this. Hence, there's a need for further research and investigation, and also teaching and also learning in this sector. If you look at the diagram at the bottom, that is the solid stream. Solid stream basically comes from the thickening process where you accumulate all the sludge. Sludge, by definition, as you know, sludge is 99% water and only 1% solids. So to treat 99% water, you need huge reactors if you employ the Victorian technologies. So this is where you need to dewater. So you need to thicken first, then you need to stabilize the sludge. You go through into fermentation or digestion process, and then you go into the thickening or the dewatering process, and then of course you can do composting and reuse and so on. So in a nutshell, this is the process flow of a sewage treatment plant. And what my point I would like to stress is, the technologies have to be further refined. Today, we still use a lot of books from the Western countries. I think with the last 20 years experiences of having our own technologies and so on, there has been a lot of first-time development of the sewage industry the last 25 years, in particular due to enactment of a new federal law, which is called the Sewerage Services Act 1993. Now, through this act, there's a lot of sewerage industry development happened over the last 25 years, including the operators, consultants, contractors, manufacturers, equipment suppliers, and so on. Now, what we need to do is to fine-tune all this technology, make it ready for export, and to actually expand this technology. And at the footnote of this is my famous quote, which I always like to borrow from Professor Lettinger. Professor Lettinger is a Nobel Award winner from Netherlands. He always quoted that there is no such thing called wastewater. It is the wasteful way on how we use water that had led to this creation of this term called wastewater treatment. So his philosophy is to also move away from this technology. He is a believer of anaerobic treatment. So I quite concur to his thoughts today, because if you want to look at treatment, meeting compliance, then this is the route you take. Your focus is to meet compliances. So you do all the best to remove the BOD, the COD, the whatever regulated parameters. But this actually does not bring real value to the economics, to the industry development and so on. So what we need to look at is to unveil the hidden treasures within this water. The basic one is, of course, reclaim water. If you can reclaim water and make it potable for the non-domestic sector. So instead of treating water to meet compliance, I think again going back to the water cycle, the operators, the policymakers, the technology developers, they must look at reusing the byproducts. And in this particular place is reusing the water is a big step to move forward. And if you look at the other byproducts, you got the biogas to convert that into energy. And if you want to focus on energy production, then I think you have to revisit the way on how we treat sewage in the first place. I think we have to produce more sludge than to reduce the amount of sludge so that you can produce more biogas, and from the biogas you can produce more energy. And of course, the third important byproduct of sewage is the sludge itself, which can be converted into biocells, biofuels, or even fertilizer, or even building materials. Now there need to be technologies towards this, and of course there's many other downstream. For example, the other organics, minerals which comes together with the wastewater. In many developed countries, they talk about sewer mining. Sewer mining is a new term where they mine for minerals. For example, phosphorus. Phosphorus on this planet is depleting. So the other biggest source of phosphorus actually comes from the wastewater. So if you can mine phosphorus and other nutrients from the wastewater and market it, of course, algae and so many other things, biodiesel and so on. These are all the byproducts. So in planning the wastewater, I think moving forward, the next 40 years or 30 years, we cannot plan it this way anymore. We have to jump a different paradigm and look at different aspects in relation back to the water cycle. And this is where you can convince your financiers, the Ministry of Finance, and also the EPU to actually make available investment, because you're no longer treating to make compliance, but you're actually treating to actually improve the economics of the country. This is where I think the focus should be the next 20 years. Next slide, please. Okay, the next following slides, I will move on very, very fast, because this just to show some illustrative pictures of the many components which I demonstrated in the earlier slide. For example, this is the headworks or the preliminary works, where you have the rubbish screening, the grit removal chambers, the grease, fat, oil and grease removal facilities, and so on. So there's a lot of technology involved. There's a lot of innovation also which can come together with this in time to come. Next slide. These are the primary clarifiers. Of course, engaging biotech and nanotech, you can reduce the surface area loadings, and you can actually have a more impactful and optimum clarifier system in the future. Next slide, please. These are the various type of biological treatment system. Biological treatment is the heart of the sewage treatment. It removes bulk of the organics in here. They call it, the technical term is food to microorganism ratio. Food is the organics, microorganism is the microbes, and you have to actually master the microbes in order to know what are the right microbes to have in the system in order to actually eat off this food. And if you want to produce more sludge, what are the right microbes to use, and so on. So the next few slides will focus on the biological system. Next slide, please. These are the four key types of biological system. In the earlier days, we have things like oxidation pond and Errata lagoon system. We call it the pond system. And then we have the suspended growth system. It's mainly in the form of suspended growth in suspension. So these are all the activated sludge system, the oxidation ditches, the sequence batch reactors, and so on. Another system is called the attached growth system. These are things which comes with a attachment. The microbes actually are attached to a media. The common ones are the RBCs, rotating biological contactor, and also the trickling filters. And today we have a lot of hybrid system. This is only the last 5 to 10 years. These are the new technology development in terms of MBBR, MBRs, and so many other new systems coming into the market. So this is where again, technology development and research is very important. And I will demonstrate some of the pictures for this system in the next few slides. Next. So this is a typical pond system. Personally, I have dealt with many pond systems over the last many years. I think this is a good, economical, affordable system. The only thing here is the land value. Maybe perhaps today not applicable in urban areas in Malaysia, but this technology is still applicable in many parts of the world. If you look at the diagram at the left-hand side, I put a few different combination of pond system, pond in series, pond in parallel, pond in combination, the flow diagram. A lot of research has been done in this area. And in today, if you look at some really advanced countries, including France, I think in southern France, if you Google, you can see, that the entire sewage from the southern France, including some compatible waste, goes through a series of pond system. Because southern France the climate is quite hot, humid, so you got sunlight, you got the wind, and so on. They use a combination of pond system to still treat. So pond system should still be taught at the university level. You cannot rule this out, because especially UTM being an international university now, there's a lot of foreign students, which I think they can bring back to their respective countries and introduce and progress on from there. If you look at the picture at the bottom, these are two regional plants. One is in Bunus and one is in Pantai, which Malaysia adopted this in the late 70s and early 80s. Today, maybe because of the land value, we don't use this pond system in urban areas, but then it has served its purpose for the last at least 3 decades. So this is a good technology. Pond system also is further enhanced by introducing aerators. Next slide, please. We call it the aerated lagoon system. The only difference here, instead of depending much on the wind, natural wind, we introduce induced aeration system in the form of diffuse aeration, surface aeration, and a combination of this. And I think there's a lot of industry in Malaysia which have mastered this technology, and some of them have actually also locally fabricated some of these aerator equipments and so on. Next slide. This is the typical conventional activated sludge, where you aerate the system, mix it for a certain hours, maybe 8 hours, 10 hours, 5 hours, depending on the design, and then you allow it to settle in the final clarifier. The settled sludge will settle at the bottom and being treated. The sludge will be treated separately, whereas the decanted supernatant actually overflows and go back to the environment. Basic system. Again, these technologies were developed in basically in in the UK in the early days. I always like to share this story. In UK, a town called Manchester, as many people know that, they are a very close rival of mine. I'm a very close supporter of Liverpool, but I have to mention Manchester because one of the first sewage treatment plants was in the UK was actually constructed in Manchester. And those days, before the sewage treatment plant, they got something which is called sewage farm. Sewage farm is nothing other than a piece of land where they go and dislodge all the sewage and just dump it on the sewage farm. But then in 1920s, I think it's 1924, about the same time as the Wright brothers invented the aeroplane, the first sewage treatment plant was done in Manchester in the UK. I think that time they were using a combination of percolating filters, using sewage treatment plant. The Wright brothers invented the first aircraft which flew and fell, and from there on, we look at the aviation industry today. They have gone millions of miles ahead. In the water industry, from the trickling filter plant and the improved activated sludge plant, we have not really progressed much in comparison to the aviation industry, what more in comparison with the telecommunication and the power industry. This is purely because lack of investment, proper management, research, and also the focus, because water has been taken for granted. Everyone knows there's plenty of water, so they wait for the water to be either polluted or run dry. Then they start focusing back on water, and once they get back water, the focus is no longer on water, because water has always been taken for granted. That's why it's important to actually go back to the water cycle, look at it holistically, plan it properly, and put the right practices and management tools to make sure that the water industry surely can end up becoming a bigger industry. If you look water from the economic point of view, from what I showed in the earlier slide, water as a commodity and from an economic tool, because anything you look at relies on water. For example, now you're listening to this lecture, the room which you're sitting on, the electricity in the room, the air condition in the room. Without water, the electricity cannot be supplied. You need tons and tons of water to generate electricity. The clothes which you're wearing today, the shoes which you're wearing today, cannot be produced without water. So if you trail back on the water footprint, water is very plenty. But the problem with us is we look at water from an isolated and divided portion. That's why water never gets its attention. So we need to actually relook at water from the economic point to actually bring back the value of water through the economic means. And like I said in my earlier slide, there's sufficient water on this planet, sufficient water in Malaysia for everyone, for everything. So it's actually how we use technology and how we manage it properly. So this is activated sludge, which I think we need to move away from this technology in times to come. Next is another version which more or less I mastered this technology. The picture there is perhaps the first extended aeration plant in the country, which I was very much involved in the design. This is a plant in Taman Tun in KL. I designed this plant in early 90s, to replace an existing oxidation pond. In the early 90s, or late 80s actually, I went to Australia to learn this technology, came back, introduced his to City Hall, and we built this first plant in 1988, if I'm not mistaken, completed 1990. And this was the technology then. And why extended aeration? Because in comparison to conventional activated sludge, you use extended aeration, meaning you utilize the aeration system to actually treat the sewage better, and you get a better quality effluent. But today, there's a lot of extended aeration plants in the country. I think our problem today is high energy costs. So now we have to look at technology to actually bring the energy cost down. And this is where we need to relook at some of this technology. Though I came up with this technology introduced here in this country and also introducing the guidelines in the country, I've put a lot of design principles on this. But I think I myself, as the contributor, am highly recommending to move away from this technology moving into the future. Next. This is the oxidation dish, another pet project. I have actually looked at this technology in the UK, a technology called ICI technology. I went to Tilbury in UK. Tilbury is almost close to the Greenwich Meridian. You know, they were doing a pilot plant. So I came back. I wrote a paper to the mayor saying that maybe we should build a first, they call it oxidation dish, 3-loop technology. This is an enhancement of the extended aeration technology because use the anoxic, toxic, and the aerobic lanes to actually improve the energy consumption. I think it's a good technology. It was introduced in Sungai Besi Regional Plant in 1994-97. But again, Japan have actually mastered this technology. They came out with Nippon Kokan oxidation dish facilities. They improved the brush aerators and so on. But this is a technology which I think still very much relevant, but there must be more thoughts put into this technology to move forward. It also comes either oval or even in circular version. I can give a lot of sharing, but due to time, I have to actually cut short. I just share pictures for you to understand. Next one. This is another sequence batch technology. In the earlier days, when indoor water started taking over a lot of sewage treatment plants, we were stuck with structures. So with the structures, there's not much modification which can be done. If you want to do it, in case a lot of cost, and of course we are limited within the space. So we started introducing a lot of pilot trials through what we call intermittent decanting extended aeration system. I remember the first one was done in Taman Naning in Cheras, near Taman QPEX, way back in 1996 or 97, I think. And today, Malaysia has one of the biggest SBR plant in the country, in Jelutong. The plant is designed for 1.2 million population equivalent, of course the biggest in Southeast Asia. Currently connected population is about 600,000. So we have also advanced on this technology. So the point to take is, Malaysia has now mastered many of these technologies, but what we need to do is for our local companies, contractors, consultants, operators, to actually perfect these technologies and also to export these technologies, because like in my earlier slide, I said there's a lot of room for us to progress in this water industry. So again, SBR is a good technology and it's improvement version of the conventional activator sludge. Next. This is a fixed growth system. This is a rotating biological contractor. Again, I was very much involved in the first. If you look at the first sewerage guidelines in the country, this was the cover, because we thought at that time, comparing extended aeration system and the RBC system, looking at the NPV values, RBC brings a lot better NPV because of the reduced long-term electricity usage. So we built one pilot in Podixon, I think Lukut, if I'm not mistaken, again way back in 1998 or what, very much involved in the project as well. And then today we have various versions of the RBC, SBC, and so on. But what really lacked is we didn't really master this technology further. I still believe that this could be one of the technology moving towards the future. A combination of a fixed growth and a suspended growth system. So perhaps people in the industry and also the university should focus more on this sort of technologies. Next one. Trickling filter. Again, if you remember in the olden days, the famous pollution engineering, must thank them for bringing the trickling filter technology to Malaysia. Of course, earlier days, the engineering was not that perfect. Over time, this technology has been perfected. Again, previously they used rock media, natural medias. Today they use a lot of plastic medias. And with the nanotechnology coming in, I think we should introduce nanotechnology into this into this trickling filter technology to actually further enhance these technologies. Next one. These are more now moving into hybrid system. Moving bed bioreactor. Again, the first one done in this country is in Putrajaya. If you look at Putrajaya Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant, they've used this MBBR system. They always say MBBR is 99% plastics and 1% knowledge. But the 1% knowledge is the real key to this technology. So if you don't know the 1% knowledge, no point you have this 99% plastics. So again, even this plastic we import. Today we are still importing from overseas. So why not we actually manufacture this technology locally? And I believe MBBR is a good technology to move forward into the future. The next one, another technology is MBR. MBR is very much similar to the I mentioned about the combination of activated sludge and the RBC. These are the improvements to the technology, and these are the technology moving forward. So I guess it's time to relook at the national guidelines. It's time to actually narrow down the options so that you don't get a combination of too many different technologies put into the market and actually crowding the market, and you don't get the optimization of the technology in the country. Next. So after going through the biological process, you got what is called disinfection. Basically, the treated sewage in terms of E. coli and all that, I think from few thousands, it's actually reduced to a very minimum level. It's quite safe to discharge because you don't really see pandemics based on sewage discharges in this country. But you have to design a chlorination or disinfection facility so that when there is a time you need to use it, you have a facility to disinfect the sewage before being discharged back to the river. Of course, there's a lot of background to this as well. Next one. When it comes to the sludge facilities, you got thickening. Thickening basically from the 99% water, you want to bring it down to about 95% water. That means you increase to 5% solids. You got gravity thickener, dissolved air flotation thickener, centrifuge thickener, gravity bulk thickener, and so on. There's a lot of science behind all this. Perhaps in future lectures we can share. Next one. Stabilization. The two common ones are the anaerobic digester, which are mainly suitable for large plants, and of course the aerobic digester for smaller plants and for more affluent, better affluent results. And both of it has its own advantages and disadvantages. Basically here, the sludge volume does not change much. What happens is stabilizing the sludge, because as you know, sludge is end product of the died bacteria, but it's still unstable. So unstable, there's a lot of pathogen. So through this digestion process, you actually disinfect and you stabilize. You ferment it, you stabilize. And in the process, sometimes anaerobic digester, you produce biogas. And this is where I mentioned earlier. You must look at not from the digestion process, but from the reuse process. That's where you create the economy, and this is what you bring towards circular economy. Next slide. I have to go a bit faster because of time. Dewatering. Now from that 95% water, you want to bring down to maybe 80% water. So you dislodge, dewater, you squeeze out at least 20% or 25% or 30% of the water. If you use a drying bed, you can even go up to 30% to 40% solids, meaning that only about 50-60% water left. But drying beds are very dependent on the climate, so hence they got roofed drying beds. But today's technology, you even have enhanced drying bed where you use a suction to suck out the water to actually enhance the drying and so on. You have sludge lagoons. In the past, one of the first sludge lagoon which I was involved in the construction was in Puchong. there was more, I think UTM was very much involved in the study. There was more for research purpose to see the effectiveness of sludge lagoons in dewatering. And then from there, we find that maybe it's not so suitable for our climate. So we moved on into mechanical dewatering. In mechanical dewatering, we've got many types, from belt press to centrifuges to filter press to even mobile or mechanical dewatering machines. Next one. So in terms of guidelines, I think there's many, but all these guidelines were appropriate for a period of time. It needs continuous improvement. So from time to time, maybe at least every 3 years, if not every 2 years, it must be updated. Likewise, today we have sufficient water acts. What we need is more rules and regulations to actually further make the industry. These rules and regulations must not be made as a limitation for the industry to grow. The rules and regulations must make the industry to grow. This is a very, very important prospect. That's why if you look at the telecommunication industry through the MCMC, their regulations are very industry driven. That's why a lot of telcos developed over the last 10, 15 years. Power sector is the same. A lot of IPPs actually grew because of the electricity ST regulations. So likewise for the water, I think we have to move away from the police and thief sort of regulation into a more progressive and incentivized regulations. And this is very important for the country to grow towards a more sustainable water industry. And the regulations must look at a more holistic. You cannot say, I'm only in charge of water, I'm only in charge of sewerage, I'm only in charge of river, I'm only in charge of... So when you start talking that way, then we will be still divided, and at the end the country suffers. Next. In terms of standards, of course, we got very simplistic standards. I can understand EQSA was in 1994, the regulation came out in 79, revised in 2009. But you see, when you have a very simplistic standard, then there's also some pros and there's also many cons. So if you look at River Thames, I was lucky enough to be attached to Thames Water for some time to study the improvement of Thames River. River Thames is as long as River Klang. It's about 120 kilometers. But in the Thames River, they have 60 over constant limits from the upstream to the downstream. That means at each discharge point, the limits are different. In Malaysia, Klang River, we have only 2. Or to be very specific, there's no water intake in Klang River, so there's only one standard, which is standard B. So is that an economical standard? So we have to revisit that again. So these are things which I think we have to take comments from the progressive point of view and move, and there must be a lot of public sharing opinion to actually debate, like in many developed countries, to get the best for the country. So this is something which needs to be revisited as well. So through this, then you can actually encourage recycled water, reuse water within a specific, sub-catchment. Next. Next slide, please. These are some of the standards which I won't go through in detail. Next. I'm going into Sustainable Development Goals. Everyone knows this is a United Nations goal up to from 2016 to 2030. Today we are already in 2021. There are 17 goals. The latest report card 2019 shows none of the goals are on track, and even if you double the current rate of implementation, it's hard to meet the 2030 targets. So we really need to work very hard to meet the United Nations SDG goals globally. And at least, next slide please, at least 8 of these 17 goals are quite related to water, as I picked up from here. And if you heard the first video just now, water actually evades poverty, which is goal number one. So if you want to get rid of poverty, you must have good water management, good water planning. If you don't have one, you cannot bring education to the society, you cannot bring industry to the society, and so on and so on. Likewise, these 8 goals are very directly related. Of course, the other goals are also related to very much related to water. So you can see water is holistically sitting as a global target, and yet the water industry is still quite laid back in many parts of the country. Hope Malaysia can one day become the water hub and become the water leader to bring forward the water industry. Next slide, please. And specifically for goal number 6, which is clean water and sanitation, there's at least 8 subgroups. And in here you can see it's not only about water supply and sanitation. It covers pollution, river management, integrated basin management. It covers advocacy, community engagement, partnership, and so on. So that is why it's important for us to look at this goal number 6 and plan our guidelines and our regulations in accordance to this to achieve a more optimum goal ahead for the country. Next. And to mirror this SDG, Malaysia have come up with the Green Technology Master Plan 2017 to 2030. There are many goals in the plan, specifically for sewerage is what is listed. At least 1/3 of the treated effluent must be put back to reuse, and 100% of the biosolids must be put back to reuse, 50% of which must be for energy purpose, and the balance 50 can be fertilizer, building materials, and any other sorts. And for water as well, there's a lot of targets set. Next slide, please. There are primary targets and also secondary targets, which I won't delve into detail. We can have another seminar just talking about green technology and targets. Suffice for me to say, we are very far behind. We have another 8, 9, 10 years, or maybe to be specific, with this MCO and so on. Maybe we have about 8 years to achieve the targets, which we need to do a lot of things, and a lot of things are with public engagement, with policy changes, industry-driven, and new methods of financing and so on. Otherwise, come 2030, we might be talking the same as what we are talking today. Next. And sewerage, looking back at the water cycle, I spent the last 1 hour, 1.5 hours talking about correlation of the sewerage and the water cycle. I think we should start looking at resource recovery rather than meeting compliance. And I mentioned to you the 3 main byproducts of sewage: bioeffluent, biosolids, and bioenergy. I think in any projects, any catchment, the catchment strategy should talk about the economics of this and how to make it happen, how to work with the industry, how to finance this, what are the various means of financing, so that that catchment strategy or the catchment plan will be a plan which is sellable, acceptable by the government, Ministry of Finance, EPU, and so on. Otherwise, you ask for money just to meet compliance, is going to be a big task, because if you want to just meet the compliance level, we are talking about something like 30 over billion over the next 20 over years. Talking about 1 over billion a year for sewerage, I think it's going to be a big challenge. Next. And there remains a lot of areas which still remain unexplored. And this is where in my morning talk today, I showed a lot of slides where I proposed UTM to take a lead together with MJIT, Malaysia Japanese International Institute of Technology, to explore many of these technology and make Malaysia a water hub for people to come and develop. The university must work with the industry to develop this and to work, and also to export this. So there's many areas to be exported based on this technology. Next slide, please. I'd like to talk about toilet just now. I talked about this amount of waste use a lot of water, transport it, and at the end you create a bigger environmental problem, and you're finding a lot of money to try to resolve it. Now, this man here, everybody knows, Mr. Bill Gates, Microsoft guy. He have moved away from Microsoft towards toilet technology now. Not long ago, only 2 years ago, 3 years ago, he challenged himself to solve the world's sanitation problem. And when he went down to the ground, he found that trying to treat sewage in today's way is not sustainable. So he invested, he got a foundation called Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. He invested $200 million to come up with the competition, and the competition was open throughout US and many parts of the world, from China and parts of Europe competed. The challenge is, he took a jar of sewage, he displayed, and he said, if someone can come with the innovation from this jar, because in the jar, he said, there's trillions of microbes. Now, if you can exploit and come up with technology to reuse these microbes, like the algae, the biodiesel, the compost, and so on, he said, this is a breakthrough in technology. Like I mentioned, telephone, 15 years ago, you can't see face. Today, if you tell people you can't see face in the telephone, people don't, it's something everybody is, understands that it is a technology of today. I think in 30 years' time, when you talk about a toilet which we can finish the business there, you don't need a sewerage system. Then if you build a new house or you want to renovate your house, you build your own toilet system, which you can do its own composting. It can convert all the waste into a byproduct, which can be used back, and a liquid can be reused for toilet flushing and gardening and so on. Today it looks as a dream, but Mr. Bill Gates have proven the only thing today he have not brought the cost down. It costs something like about $50,000 for one toilet. So we said if we can bring it down to $5,000, becomes affordable. What more if we can bring down to 5,000 ringgit? I think every household, new household, they don't have to pay any more contribution. They will invest in this sort of toilet system. Now, how this works is, maybe I can show a video. Next slide, next please. Okay.
I want to talk to you today about toilets. In rich countries, you just take the toilet for granted. It's magical that there's a sewer system bringing water in, taking away the waste, and it all gets cleaned up in a processing plant. However, for the poorest 2.5 billion in the world, they don't have this. It's unaffordable. We can't build that for everyone in the world. Some of the poorest, their toilet may look like this, a pit latrine. The waste here is not processed. It's still gonna get out into the community. They smell terrible. But everybody should have great sanitation. A toilet in their house that is comfortable and doesn't smell awful. Not only is a toilet make your life comfortable, getting rid of that waste is key to human health. It's unprocessed waste that causes most of the diarrheal diseases. It ends up with lots of kids being malnourished. So how do we solve this? Well, some scientists that I work with said that we should challenge the world to come up with a way of taking the waste and processing it locally. We call this the program to reinvent the toilet. Several reinvented toilets are being tested right now in Durban, South Africa. Durban's a good place to run these tests because the city is growing fast and many people there don't have modern sanitation, which means that even if they have access to a toilet, the waste can get into the environment and make people sick. A typical toilet needs water, but many of the new approaches don't require any water at all. Some of them don't need electricity either. Others run on solar power. All of them remove the pathogens from the waste. And most importantly, they don't have to be connected to the city sewer system. I'm optimistic that eventually we'll find approaches that make great sanitation available to everyone.
Okay, that was a brief idea of how to reinvent the toilet. So, like I mentioned this morning to UTM, I think they should get their researchers to focus on reinventing toilet, so Malaysia can be exporter of the new toilet system and further improve the way we looked at sewerage in long term to come. So you could be a good exporter. And the wastewater treatment plant today, I mentioned, rather than looking at the meeting the compliance, regulatory compliance of the effluent, I think all the wastewater treatment plants today needs to be relooked from the circular economy point of view. So if you look at this plant here, this is a small plant in Denmark, in a small town called Billund. Billund is a town, very creative town. This is the town where Lego was invented. You know Lego? And if you talk about ground force pumps and so on, it all comes from this town. I think the town is hardly about 10,000 population. Now what they did is they looked at their wastewater treatment plant, they made it energy positive. They looked at the entire water system, reused the water for their water supply system, and the sludge, they did co-digestion with imported organic and domestic waste, and they produced 150% excess green energy, meaning that apart from self-sufficient for the own plant, that means zero electricity cost, they sell 150% of the energy generated to the grid. So if a small town like Billund can do this, why not Malaysia? Why not many other parts of the world? And this is a real living example of a technology in the future, and it's already there. It's no longer in pilot scale. So what we need is a drive towards this, the investment, the incentives, and also supporting policies and regulation to make it happen. So this should be the sewage plant design of the future, to look at the circular economy and tie it towards the well-being of the nation. So this is a great example. Next. I think in Malaysia, we are fortunate. We have come up with a few pilot scale using green technology. If you look at this plant, this is a pantai plant. Remember I talked about the sewage farms. Sewage farm is you take the sewage and dump it into a farm. So pantai is a place located somewhere in Bangsa. Today they call it Bangsa South. But if you look around, you cannot find any pantai. Pantai means beach. So you always wonder, where this name came, pantai. So pantai is outskirts of Kuala Lumpur during those days, during the British era. They actually used to dump the sludge there. So it was a sewage farm. Sorry, it was a sewage farm. So sewage farm, if you convert, I'm not that old, but if I ask the elderly people, they used to say, itu tempat padang tai. Padang tai, you convert, jadi pantai. But the name today is a Park Lane name. Anyone staying in pantai, the property value is very high. So that's how the name pantai came. So in the 70s and the 80s, we adapted from the sewage farm, from a primary treatment system towards a pond system. And you can see that aerated lagoon system. And that was a technology appropriate at that time, early 70s and the 80s. But today, because of the expensive land value, Pantai Bangsa is a golden triangle area, so the property value is very high. Government invested in actually, technology. So by that, the plant went underground. On top, you got a beautiful park, and the land is much more better utilized. And the properties around the area, you can see a lot of new high-end properties actually comes up around the sewage treatment plant. So instead of staying very far away from the plant. Last time they call it Pantai Dalam. Now people come towards the plant. And what is more important in this slide here is the next slide. There's already a demonstration utilization of the green technology in terms of solar panels, effluent reuse system, biogas, resource heat system, skylight lighting system, rainwater harvesting, and also efficient equipment system for energy saving. Now, this is not the optimum plan, but it's a start. So I believe in the future, using this as a guide to the circular economy, I think we should present our proposals to the government in a more economic way on how we actually get back value from these sewage treatment plants. And this is how you have to actually link it back to the economic plus the water cycle. You know? And this is where I think the next 30 years master plan should be looking towards this development. The next slide, please. Another quick example is in Langat. This plant is almost going to complete. Another showcase plant. They use biogas, solar energy, bioeffluent, and rainwater harvesting. Next. This is just for demonstration purpose. Next. Of course, they also have, a park on the top with sports facilities, badminton courts, basketball courts, and so on. I think one of the things which we need to actually convince the policymakers and the community is, the acceptance, and most of the acceptance comes through a fatwa. Fatwa is a scholastic ruling, by the learned people. And here you can see a picture of, that picture in the top there is the previous Mufti of Wilayah, who is the current Minister of Regional Affairs, and he has actually come to the sewage treatment plant and try to understand, together with all the learned people, the imams, to understand how the sewage treatment works. In a very simplistic form, I can say water is H2O. Water is H2O. So if water is polluted, means there's pollution in the water. So if you use technology to remove the pollution, then you get back H2O. Just like, say, our shirt. If our shirt is soiled by pollution, we wash it, the shirt can be still pure, can be used. So it's, halal in terms of. So in that progress, when we actually explained to them and they took their own time to do their own research, they have actually come up with a fatwa, meaning that the reused water and the reused sludge can be reused. They use the word harus, which can be used. But because Malaysia there's plentiful water, if in times of no water, yes, you can reuse back the sludge and also the water. And also, next slide. Next slide. Sorry. So there's also, previous slide. There's also international fatwas. This one here is from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. There's many research done to actually, give this legal opinion of the use of the byproducts. So I think it's time now for us to actually, engage. And Singapore is a classic case where they looked at many taps and they look at circular economy. People were laughing them at new water, but today I think they are quite water sufficient for the next many years to come, although they are small. Next one, we also go back to the water cycle. Every time we have to plan sewerage in conjunction with the whole water cycle. That's where we can do the selling, and in the process, we have to also look at the economics of it in a broader view. Next. So in researching, I think moving away from the typical water cycle which we learn in school, the National Geographic, I think we have to now do the research on the real detailed global water cycle, which consists of the natural water cycle, the groundwater, the raw water, the treated wastewater, the go on please, the untreated wastewater, the agriculture water, and the surface runoff, and so on. Only then you can come up with a holistic water global direction moving forward and make water as a strategic economical tool for the country and compete with the other utilities such as telecommunication, power, and so on. If you keep looking at isolation, I think you require many years to get to the developed status. And Malaysia is fortunate enough to be a leader for many other parts of the world. If we take the steps today and over the next 15 to 20 years, we could actually export many things around the world. Next. So finally, this is one of my final slides. For the last almost 2 hours, I've talked about water, sewage in context of the water, and in summary, good sanitation and sewerage practices is very important part of the mankind and the environment. There exists many opportunities for improvement in sanitation and sewerage services. The recovering of the untouched treasures or the resource recovery will be the technology of the future. And here, I hope UTM can play a lead, may become the lead water university in the country. Although today I heard there's about 120 over universities in Malaysia. When I was studying, there was hardly 5 universities in the country. Very difficult to study engineering in the country, so you have to go overseas to do engineering. Today, you have many universities, but then we must be ready to actually expand on the industry as well. So we have to work very closely with the industry, get many industry players attached to the universities, unreveal all these untouched treasures, resource recovery. Capacity development is a key towards this includes teaching, resource recovery and so on. And finally, looking at water from a holistic point of view in conjunction with the water cycle is more important than looking at it in isolation like currently. So these are the things which will bring our water industry to move forward. And perhaps this is my final slide. Next slide. Ada lagi. It's a thank you slide. Of course, being a hardcore Liverpool supporter, the tagline is, if you are in water, you will never walk alone. So get serious into water, invest more on water, research more on water, share knowledge on water, and water and sewerage and river management will be a new industry, and you can attract many people to this industry in the future. So with that, thank you very much. I've optimally utilized the full coming to 2 hours now. I pass back, and if I've said anything wrong in my last 1-2 hours, I seek apology. Nothing intentional. It was more on sharing of the knowledge, and hope we can have many more engagement to share knowledge and to improve the water sector in the country. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof, for the presentation. It was indeed, Prof, a very complete presentation, I would say, very complete, covering from the fundamental of the sewerage services until the current outlooks. We have several questions actually from the audience. Okay, however, due to our time constraint, perhaps I can take up two significant questions. Okay, let me read it for you just for a short while. Okay, so this is the question from Professor Engineer Muhammad Fadil Madin. Okay, Prof. Malaysia supposed to have actual sewerage action plan to be as resources of water for other purposes, not for potable water. So do you think our investment towards this, not much? How this supposed to be highlighted from the regulatory part?
Okay, this is a very good question. We have the SDG, we have our own Green Technology Master Plan, and we have a target in the Green Technology Master Plan, which says that by 2030, 1/3 of the wastewater treated must be put back to reuse. Today we are 2021. We treat, if I'm not mistaken, slightly more than 5,000 MLD today. But how much of MLD do we reuse? I can say hardly 20 to 30 MLD. So to get 1/3 of 5,000 is slightly more than 2,000 MLD. So what's required is change of policies, incentivizing, attracting the industry. By having new regulation, you get participation. For example, today license are only given to the water players, the state water companies. Now, if you give a similar license to like the telecommunication industry, many telcos were developed. The power industry, many IPPs were developed. So if you give licenses to many of our current players, I think they will find the bankers, they will find the investment, they will find the partners, they will find the technologies, they will use the water. I think there's some pilot projects like the glove factory requiring a lot of water. They take the water to treat and reuse. I'm sure in terms of economics, it's feasible. So there must be incentive to actually move forward. So we cannot be stuck with the police and thief sort of approach and encourage this, just like the telecommunication and the power sector, including transportation. I think transport is very open, So only the water industry is a little bit still old-fashioned, I think we need to move, and I believe the government is looking seriously into this. I think the ministry's KSU is very keen in making this happen. He's a key contributor to the Green Technology Master Plan. He was once the Vice Chancellor of UTM. I'm sure, he has the vision for it moving forward.
Okay. Thank you, Prof, for the answer. And we have another one. So the second question is that are we really revolutionized our system, policy, strategy since a decade ago? What our benchmark to be self-sustaining in sewerage framework?
A decade is only about 10 years ago. So if you ask me, is there anything revolutionized the last 10 years? My straight answer would be no. The only new thing which came the last 10 years, Visha came in 2006 and Force in 2008. That's more than 10 years ago. The only new thing which came about, which I think is a game changer, is the Green Technology Master Plan. But there's many good things in the Green Technology Master Plan, but there's no proper enablers, if I can say, to make the Green Technology Master Plan. It remains as a master plan. It came out in 2017. Today is 2021. At least if you produce a 3 years report card, I think we failed miserably according to the targets of the master plan. So you must have revolutionary, not so much on policy, but I think one of the SDG goals is partnership. So you must encourage a lot of engagement and partnership, share knowledge, so that people will come in and make the changes. And I'm sure there's a lot of takers also in Malaysia. Malaysians are also very creative and innovative. But then, you put a lot of rules and regulation, restrict them, I think they cannot move.
Okay, Prof. We have one last question. Okay, I believe this is a PhD student, a PhD candidate. So this is regarding the individual septic tank. So this candidate asking that the higher percents of coverage area with the sewerage system, is the river water quality will become better? What is your Prof opinion?
My opinion is, if the 1 million septic tank, if you put, I think it's about 1.2, 1.3 million septic tank. So if you put 5% to a septic tank, you multiply, that is about 7 million people. 7 million people, if only less than 5% dislodge, the rest, the organic waste builds up after 1 year, after 2 years, after 3 years, after 5 years, after 10 years, what goes in actually goes out. Definitely, the river water quality is impacted. Now, I did a simulation looking at the DOE environmental quality, river water quality report. So from back in whenever they started, up to 2018, there was an improvement from 1997 onwards. Now, what happened is, Water as a company was formed in 1994. One of their key function then was mandatory dislodging of septic tank. So in the first 3 years, they served notice and they started dislodging in the septic tank. I think at one time they went up to more than 10% dislodging. That immediately showed a great improvement in the river water quality. So imagine if you can dislodge 50% of the septic tank, 60% of the septic tank, what more if 95% of the septic tank? Definitely the river water quality will improve, bulk of it, you know. But apart from the septic tank discharge, there's a lot of sewage discharge which needs to improve. So sewage needs to be tackled separately, need to be connected back to the sewage, and other non sewage pollution.
Yes.
All the kitchen waste and all that is also needs to be tackled.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Prof, for the feedbacks. Okay, for all the questions. Thank you, audience, as well. I think these are all. Okay, I hope this webinar would give a positive insight to all audiences. Thank you very much, Prof, for your quality time and also sharing. Okay, and thank you, audience. Assalamualaikum, and have a nice day, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye.